The United States Congress passed a law that says the Navy must have at least 11 aircraft carriers. Not 10, not 12, 11. That number did not come from a budget calculation. It did not come from a military strategist sitting down and deciding how many carriers America needs to look powerful. It came from math, specifically from a set of maintenance cycles, deployment schedules, and human endurance limits that, when you work through them completely, produce exactly one answer: 11. And when the number drops below 11, even briefly, the consequences are severe enough that the Navy and Congress treat it as a national security emergency. This is the story of why that number exists, what happens when it breaks, and what it actually costs in human terms to keep 11 of the most complex machines ever built operating continuously, simultaneously, around the globe. Start with a single carrier, any carrier. That ship has a lifespan of approximately 50 years. Over those 50 years, it will spend time doing three things. It will deploy, it will prepare to deploy, and it will undergo maintenance. Those three phases are not equal in length, and they do not happen once. They repeat in a cycle that governs everything about how the Navy plans its operations. Under the current system, a carrier spends roughly 6 months deployed, then returns home for a period of training and preparation that lasts approximately the same length of time, and then enters a maintenance period before the cycle begins again. The full cycle from the end of one maintenance period to the end of the next is approximately 32 months. The Navy calls the logic that governs this cycle the rule of thirds. At any given moment, 1/3 of the carrier fleet is deployed somewhere in the world. 1/3 is preparing for deployment, working up its crew, integrating its air wing, running exercises. 1/3 is in maintenance, undergoing repairs and upgrades that can range from routine work to the most complex industrial procedures performed anywhere in the American defense establishment. Divide 11 by 3. You get approximately 3.6 in each category. Round to real numbers, and you get something like 4 deployed, 4 preparing, 3 in maintenance. That is the system in steady state. Now ask the obvious question: why not 10 or 12? With 10 carriers and the rule of thirds, you get roughly 3 deployed, 3 preparing, 3 in maintenance, with 1 left over that does not fit cleanly into any category. 3 deployed carriers sounds like it might be enough. But the Navy has identified 6 theaters that require continuous carrier presence to maintain American deterrence commitments: the Middle East, the Western Pacific, the Mediterranean, the Atlantic, the Indian Ocean, and the capacity to surge in a crisis without pulling a carrier away from another theater. 3 deployed carriers cannot cover 6 theaters while also maintaining a surge reserve. You are 1 carrier short of what the math requires. With 12 carriers, the numbers work slightly better on paper. 4 deployed, 4 preparing, 4 in maintenance. More flexibility, more capacity. But 12 carriers require 12 carrier air wings, 12 sets of escorts, 12 complete logistics chains. The manpower and budget implications of the 12th carrier extend far beyond the hull itself to everything that carrier needs to operate. Congress has looked at this calculation repeatedly and consistently concluded that the marginal benefit of a 12th carrier does not justify the additional cost. 11 is the number that sits at the intersection of what the strategy requires and what the budget can support. That is why the law says 11, not because 11 is perfect, because 11 is the minimum that works. Now here is where the math gets complicated and where the human cost enters the picture. The rule of thirds assumes that every carrier in the fleet is cycling through its phases on schedule. 1/3 deployed, 1/3 preparing, 1/3 in maintenance, all rotating cleanly. That assumption breaks the moment any carrier falls behind schedule in maintenance. And in the modern U.S. Navy, carriers fall behind schedule constantly. The primary reason is something called the Refueling and Complex Overhaul. The acronym is RCOH, and it is the most demanding industrial procedure performed on any American military platform. Every nuclear aircraft carrier carries 2 nuclear reactors. Those reactors are loaded with fuel when the carrier is built, and that fuel lasts approximately 25 years. Halfway through the carrier's 50-year lifespan, the fuel runs out. The carrier has to be refueled. Refueling a nuclear aircraft carrier is not like refueling a car. It is not like refueling a nuclear power plant. It is a procedure so complex and so extensive that it has no real parallel anywhere in American industry. The process begins with cutting a massive hole in the ship's hull. Not a small access panel. A hole large enough for workers, equipment, and reactor components to move through. Workers then remove the top of the reactor, extract hundreds of spent nuclear fuel rods, and replace them with new ones. Every rod must be handled according to strict radiological protocols. The waste has to be packaged, documented, and transported to a licensed facility. But the refueling is only the beginning. While the reactor is offline and the ship is in dry dock, the Navy does everything else that can only be done while the carrier is out of service. The entire electronic suite is upgraded. The combat systems are modernized. The catapult systems are overhauled. The water purification systems, the ventilation systems, the thousands of valves and pumps and sensors that keep the ship alive are inspected, repaired, or replaced. The wiring throughout the ship, hundreds of miles of it, is tested and updated. An RCOH takes between 4 and 6 years to complete. The USS George Washington spent 2,100 days in RCOH. That is nearly 6 years. During those 6 years, the George Washington was not deployed. It was not preparing to deploy. It was a steel city sitting in a dry dock in Newport News, Virginia, generating no carrier presence anywhere in the world, while costing billions of dollars in labor and materials. 11 carriers minus 1 in RCOH is 10 carriers in the active cycle. 10 carriers trying to fill the roles that 11 were designed to cover means something has to give. Either a theater loses its carrier presence, or the carriers that remain in the active cycle are pushed harder than the rule of thirds intends. The Navy almost always chooses to push harder. The mechanism for pushing harder is the deployment extension. Under the standard cycle, a carrier deploys for approximately 6 months. 6 months away from home port. 6 months of operations, exercises, and standing watch in whatever theater the carrier has been assigned. Then the carrier comes home. When the fleet is short, 6 months becomes 7, then 8, then 9. The USS Dwight D. Eisenhower returned from a deployment in 2024 that lasted 9 months. The crew had been at sea, with only brief port visits, for the better part of a year. The USS Gerald R. Ford's most recent deployment extended to more than 200 days. By March 2026, the Ford had been forward deployed for so long that it had become a reference point in discussions about fleet overextension. 9-month deployments do not just strain the machinery, they break the people. The sailors aboard these ships are not machines. They are human beings who left families, relationships, and lives on shore for what they understood to be a 6-month commitment. When that commitment extends by 3 months without warning, the psychological and family costs are severe. Divorce rates in units with extended deployments are measurably higher. Retention among junior enlisted sailors drops after extended deployments. The Navy tracks something called operational tempo stress, and it correlates directly with deployment length. When deployments consistently exceed their planned duration, the Navy loses experienced sailors who decide the life is not worth what it costs them. The Navy calls the scenario where a fleet falls below the critical threshold the death spiral. Here is how it works. The fleet drops below 11 carriers for any reason. Maybe an RCOH runs long. Maybe a carrier is damaged and needs emergency repair. Maybe a budget crisis delays a new carrier's construction. Whatever the cause, the remaining carriers have to extend their deployments to cover the gap. Extended deployments accelerate wear on the ships. Accelerated wear means more maintenance is required sooner. More maintenance means more carriers are pulled out of the active cycle, which means the remaining carriers have to extend their deployments further, which accelerates wear, which means more maintenance. Each step in the spiral makes the next step worse. The death spiral is not a theoretical risk. It has happened. When the fleet briefly dipped toward 10 operational carriers in the years following the Cold War drawdown, the Navy experienced exactly this pattern. Deployments lengthened, readiness suffered, sailors left, ship availability declined, and it took years of sustained investment to recover. This is why 11 is not just a number, it is the firewall against the death spiral. Now consider what 11 carriers actually requires from a purely industrial standpoint. There are 4 shipyards in the United States capable of performing major carrier maintenance. 4. For a fleet of 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers operating on continuous deployment cycles, with some in RCOH and others in shorter maintenance periods, 4 shipyards is barely enough. Newport News Shipbuilding in Virginia is the only yard in the country capable of building new nuclear aircraft carriers. It is also one of the primary yards for RCOH. When the USS John C. Stennis went into RCOH in May 2021, it occupied a dry dock at Newport News that was also needed for other work. The Stennis was expected to emerge in 2025. Its schedule slipped. Every day the Stennis remained in dock was a day Newport News could not fully focus on other work, including the construction of the USS John F. Kennedy, the second Gerald R. Ford-class carrier, whose sea trials in early 2026 provided the first glimpse of potential relief for the strained fleet. The workforce problem compounds the facility problem. Carrier maintenance requires highly specialized skills. Nuclear work requires workers with security clearances and years of training in radiological procedures. Sheet metal work on carrier hulls requires experience with steel thicknesses and structural configurations that do not exist in commercial shipbuilding. Electrical work on combat systems requires familiarity with military specifications that civilian electricians do not have. Many of the workers who built and maintained the current fleet of Nimitz-class carriers learned those skills on the job over decades. They are now retiring. The workers replacing them lack the accumulated experience, and the training pipeline to develop that experience takes years. The Navy has been pumping money into workforce development at its key shipyards, but the gap between the workforce needed and the workforce available is real and will persist for years. This is the hidden constraint behind the 11 carrier requirement. 11 is the minimum the strategy needs. But 11 also assumes that the industrial base can maintain 11 on schedule. When the industrial base falls behind, 11 carriers on paper becomes fewer than 11 carriers in practice. And fewer than 11 in practice means everything described above starts happening again. There is one more layer to this story that almost never gets discussed in public coverage of carrier operations: the coffin lockers. That is the unofficial name sailors use for the rack storage space aboard carriers. The small rectangular lockers built into the underside of sleeping racks, approximately the size of a suitcase, where a sailor stores everything they own for the duration of a deployment. When deployments were 6 months, coffin lockers were sized for 6 months' worth of personal items. Uniforms, toiletries, a few personal effects, maybe a book or two. 6 months fits in a suitcase. 9 months does not fit in a suitcase. When the USS Eisenhower extended to 9 months, sailors were living with possessions that had been compressed into a 6-month locker for 3 additional months. They were wearing uniforms that had accumulated 9 months of wear in environments designed for 6. They were maintaining relationships over a data connection intended to cover 6 months of absence for 9. The coffin locker is not just a storage container, it is a physical representation of the contract the Navy makes with its sailors. We will ask this of you for this long and no longer. When that contract breaks because the fleet is too small to honor it, the coffin locker becomes a symbol of something else, of a system that is asking more than it promised to ask. This is the human reality behind the law that says 11 behind the rule of thirds. behind the RCOH schedules and the dry dock availability calculations and the industrial base investment plans. Somewhere right now, a 22-year-old aviation mechanic is sleeping in a rack on a carrier that has been deployed for 2 months longer than anyone told them it would be deployed. They are doing their job. They are maintaining the aircraft that project American power across the globe. They are part of a system that works because they make it work. The system requires 11 carriers to function. Below 11, it starts breaking. Not suddenly, not all at once, but incrementally in ways that show up first in statistics and later in the faces of sailors who have been at sea too long. Congress understood this when it passed the law. 11 is not arbitrary. 11 is the answer to a question that was asked with full knowledge of everything described in this video. How many carriers do you need to maintain American power at sea without breaking the people who make that power real? 11. Not 10, not 12, 11. This is Naval Depth. Subscribe and stay with us.